It's time for the Roots and Roots Show with your host, Greg Rashid, bringing you history and music from the Black American diaspora. Greg and his guests' goal is to root the show's information in your psyche, providing you the roots to expand knowledge within your community. Now here's your host, Greg Rashid.
Yeah, hello there. I want to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the universe. Myself, I'm in Bangkok, Thailand, for some of you who don't know. But I hope you're having a great night, evening, day. It's another edition of the Root and Root Show. A special show. I've been very fortunate really this year as far as the interviews. And I got to say, this is a really dynamite interview I'm doing today. So much so that I'm not even doing music today, except the intro and outro. Because this guest here, Keith Ryan Cartwright, and his subject matter, Black Cowboys of Rodeo, Unsung Heroes from Harlem to Hollywood and the American West. It's his new book, and it's just amazing. It's on the University of Nebraska Press. And I'm going to stop talking here in a minute and just let you listen to the interview. But I want to say hi to all my friends that listen all over the world. Got some new friends in Serbia now. But a lot of folks, they listen at their convenience on various places all over the internet. But most people listen every Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. Mountain Time in Colorado on KUHSdenver.com, created by the one and only, the great, the superb Henry Archuleta. And I want to say hi to all my friends in the Colorado region, hoping to get back there soon, sometime next year. But I'm going to just shut up right now. We're going to get to this interview. Great interview with Keith Ryan Cartwright. So let's hear it right now on the Root and Root Show.
You're only recording audio.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're back again on the Root and Root Show. And I'm just honored to have as my guest today. And I love the book that he wrote. And I know that you're going to love hearing about the book. And because I'm a big aficionado of Westerns, especially Black Cowboys, because I go way back as far as reading about following the history of Black Cowboys, dating back to when I was a teenager in the late 60s and 70s in particular. But I'm honored today to have on my program Keith Ryan Cartwright. He's the author of an amazing book, Black Cowboys of Rodeo, Unsung Heroes from Harlem to Hollywood in the American West. And it's on the University of Nebraska Press. And I want to say hi to you, Keith. Are you there?
I'm here, and the honor is all mine. Thank you for having me on your show. Thank you for sharing the book and all that you've read in it with your audience.
If I had my way, if I was a billionaire, I would send this book to every high school in America, just everywhere. Because it needs, and also in colleges too, because it needs to be in there. Because so many folks, they just don't, even, we're in 2020 now, and there's still folks who don't even realize that there were Black Cowboys. And the information is out there, and what you've done with your book, you just are showing that, yeah, there were Black Cowboys, in the 19th century, but there are currently Black Cowboys, African American cowboys that are here, that are in rodeo, that have been around for a long time. And I'm just glad that you bring that up in your book. It's really great. And I like how you started the book off with, if you could talk about it, the Gene Autry's Cowboy Code, because that kind of sets the stage for everything you're talking about.
Yeah, I wanted to, as much as, as much as I was writing a book about social issues of yesteryear and today, that we've made advances, some things have changed, some things have not changed. And so it is a book that does, that gets to the root of that. It's a Western. Like you said, you've grown up liking Westerns, and some people may see it as a Black Western, but Black history is American history, and this is about the West, and it's a modern day Western, and I focus on not just black cowboys, but specifically black cowboys of rodeo. And there is no better way to start a Western, a modern day Western, than with a passage from Gene Autry's Cowboy Code.
Yeah, and for some of my listeners who are listening, because I got a lot of younger folks that listen, and Gene Autry, he was a big movie star in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and huge star. Ended up owning the California Angels, who are now the Anaheim Angels, Los Angeles Angels now. Just a big time star. Why you don't know, but Google his name, Gene Autry. But there are a lot of, Westerns were a big deal at one time for a lot of young folks out there. And you have to understand how important this book that Keith has written is, as far as just documenting black cowboys from the past and the ones that are around now. Now, you talk about in the book how, who inspired you, just for my listeners, who inspired you to write this book? Because I believe you said it took you 3 years to write it, but there was one guy who was considered the Jackie Robinson of rodeo that inspired you to write it. And talk about him.
Yes, absolutely. It's been 14 or 15 years now since I met Murtis Guytman, who is widely regarded as the Jackie Robinson of rodeo. And Murtis wasn't the first black cowboy to turn pro as a rodeo cowboy, but he was the very first one to ever qualify for the National Finals Rodeo in Las Vegas. At that time, it wasn't even in Vegas yet. It was might have been in Dallas the year he went. I think it went from Dallas to Oklahoma City to Las Vegas. But anyway, around it, he qualified for the National Finals Rodeo, and that is the mark of a great rodeo cowboy, because only the top 15 cowboys in each discipline, and he was a bull rider, and he went 7 times to the NFR, and so for 7 out of a 8-year period, he was one of the 15 best bull riders in the world that year. And
that's amazing.
In 1967, the height of civil rights, and we all know what America was like then, and rodeo is a perceived sport in which it's white, but in 1967 he finished 3rd in the world.
Amazing.
And so that goes against all those perceptions that rodeo was a sport for white cowboys. The West, just like the West and of the 1800s, in the 1900s, rodeo was it was not void of color, and that was something that I set out to show readers. Just not just that black cowboys were part of rodeo, but that they played a significant role in rodeo throughout the history of rodeo, going all the way back to Bill Pickett.
Oh, yeah.
We have a modern day sport now known as steer wrestling, and back at the turn of the century, it was known as bulldogging, and that was developed by a black cowboy named Bill Pickett. And so one of the 7 major disciplines of rodeo came about because of a black cowboy. And so without that black cowboy, we may not have ever had steer wrestling.
And I'm glad you brought up, Bill Pickett, because this show is based around the world, but the station is in Colorado, in Denver, Colorado. And a lot of my listeners have probably attended the Bill Pickett invitational rodeo event each year. It comes to Denver. And one of my late friends, you mentioned, I was so happy you mentioned him in the book, Lou Vasson. He's the one that created that back in 1984. And I'm just talk a little bit about him, because there's some listeners who may not know him, but He in Denver, he's a legend. He's a legend.
Yeah, he is. And Lou and I have something in common. We don't have a lot in common, but we have one thing in common. Lou and I are not cowboys, but we admire cowboys. We admire the Western way of life, and we wanted to share it with people.
Right.
I'm a writer. I'm a storyteller, and so I shared the story the only way I knew how, which was to write a book. Lou, on the other hand, was a promoter and into marketing and publicity and a showman of sorts. And so he went to a rodeo. I think he went to the National Western Stock Show there in Denver, and the year he went,
they called it the Cheyenne Days, Cheyenne
oh
Frontier
no,
Days
that's
in
Cheyenne
Wyoming.
Frontier Days are in.
Wyoming.
They're coming up. That's up
Yeah.
in Cheyenne. He actually went to a rodeo in Denver in January called the National Western Stock Show.
Oh, that's right, the stock
Rodeo.
show. That's right.
And so it was there on a cold January night. He was watching the rodeo, and that particular night there were no black cowboys, and he wondered if there were in fact black cowboys competing in rodeo. And he made some calls and did a little search, and sure enough, he found that there were hundreds at that time, if not thousands, of black cowboys. And so he set out to create an opportunity for them, and so became the Bill Pickett Invitational Rodeo, which to this day remains the most significant nationally touring black rodeo still in existence.
And if you've never been, listeners, it's an amazing event. Those of you who are living in the Colorado area, please check it out. And those who are listening in places like California, other places in the U.S., please check it out when it comes to the community, because it's a unique opportunity. It's really a fun event. It's really fun.
I think what's great about it is not only do you see black cowboys being cowboys and competing in all the different disciplines, and cowgirls, and they're in breakaway roping, they're in the barrel racing, they're in the steer-on decorating, so there's black cowgirls competing as well. And you see this, right? You get to see it happen. But even more important, Marcus Friday, who I write about and profile in the book Black Cowboys of Rodeo, he's the voice of the Bill Pickett Invitational Rodeo. And he's not only telling you what you're seeing in those moments and the spaces in between the competitors, he's giving you the history. He's telling you about who Bill Pickett is. He's telling you about the evolution of the black cowboy from even before Bill Pickett in the 1800s, and bringing you right up to today, and letting you know who some of the legends are over the years, and comparing them and contrasting them to today's cowboys and cowgirls who are competing in the event. And that Denver event, for your listeners, I believe is always the same weekend as Martin Luther King Day.
Yes, it is. It definitely is. It's a big event, and I hope, listeners, please check it out when it comes in the community. And I wanted to ask you this before we get back to the book. I was curious, have you been, speaking of Denver, have you ever gone to the Black American Western Museum?
I tried. I was in town. It's interesting. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Lonnie Bunch III.
Yes, in DC,
the founding director of the National Museum of African American Culture and History in Washington, D.C. And he's now the first ever African American secretary of the entire Smithsonian. And early on in the research for my book, I reached out to Dr. Bunch, and he graciously, I'm not sure why, agreed to sit down and do an interview. And it